Well, welcome to our lecture 16 today. Why don't we start with the prayer? Go ahead. Noptola, put your video on and let's get started. I want to start recording. We're starting with prayer. So during the class, please your video on because otherwise I don't know what you're doing. So leave your video on. Noptola, pray for us.
លោកគ្រូអាឋានមួយខ្ញុំព្រះវរនៃយើងខ្ញុំនៅគុណឋានសួគ៌ទូបង្គំព្រះគុណព្រះអង្គសម្រាប់ថ្នាក់រៀនថ្ងៃនេះជាថ្មីសូមព្រះអង្គបានប្រទានព្រះវិញ្ញាណនឹងឲ្យយើងខ្ញុំបានទទួលនៅការបង្រៀនលោកគ្រូអូហើយសូមព្រះវិញ្ញាណបរិសុទ្ធបានដឹកនាំយើងខ្ញុំឲ្យយើងខ្ញុំអាចនឹងធ្វើបានដើម្បីយើងខ្ញុំអាចនឹងសរសេរនៅសៀវភៅសម្រាប់អ្នកជំនាន់ក្រោយសម្រាប់ជួយនឹងដឹកនាំក្រុមជំនុំនៅកម្ពុជាឲ្យយើងខ្ញុំខ្លាចជាអ្នកដែលសរសេរសៀវភៅដើម្បីនឹងអាចជួយនឹងការដែលធ្វើព័ន្ធក្នុងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាជាកិច្ចដែលក្រុមជំនុំដែលអាចនឹងឈរដោយខ្លួនឯងបានដោយពឹងលើព្រះគុណរបស់ព្រះអង្គម្ចាស់អរគុណព្រះអង្គគាត់ថាព្រះនាមព្រះយេស៊ូវគ្រីស្ទអាមែន
Amen. Well, let's go to our lecture. Try to come on time. Everybody are a bit late today, so make sure that you come on time. We could get started on time. Let's see. This is our lecture 16. Haksu. As I told you already, we'll be covering lecture 4, 5, 6 review today. Yesterday, I did lecture 1 to 3. And I got all of your reports from one-page report on lecture 1 through 3. Everybody did an excellent job. I'm very pleased, very happy. So you also need to turn in lecture 4, 5, 6, the 3 lecture notes on what you watched and respond so that I'll know that you watched and that I'll also answer the question that you're going to raise during those lectures. Lecture 4, in the YouTube, I start talking about patron-client relationship and how the Judy Ledgerwood started writing about. I'm just gonna read. The patron-client relationship has been a popular concept, very famous concept in socio-political studies. Although there is evidence to show that patron-client network and cooperation among small informal groups are prevalent in Cambodia, the Ledgerwood says that its role is not clear because it has not been sufficiently explored within the context of Korean missionaries working with Cambodians. What do I mean by that? It means that the whole concept of patron-client has been studied in the socio-political studies, so sociology and politics. Always talk about, because a lot of patron-client relationship, it was studied because of the voting, the buying vote with rice. So a lot of global South, the powerful people pass out money, pass out rice, and then get their voting so that they become elected as government officials. And so Ledgerwood, Judy, talks about that. Who is Judy Ledgerwood? Well, as I told you over and over again, as a scholar, as one who studied, and especially if you have a plan, if you're planning to teach in your life as a professor sometime later, then you have to familiarize, you have to know all the professors who is in that field. So I actually keep a file of all the professors that I studied. PCD means patron clients, who wrote extensively on patron-client scholars. And one is Judy Ledgerwood. So I have a basic information about her. She is a woman, of course, and PhD from Cornell, 1990. She's got her PhD from Cornell. Cornell is a very, very good school in America. And then she's a director of what? Southeast Asian Studies. She's a director of Center for Southeast Asia. You know, Cambodia is a part of Southeast Asia. So she's expert at Southeast Asia study in the what? Department of Anthropology. So she's expert in Cambodia in the field of anthropology. And I'll explain what anthropology is. In the School of Northern Illinois University, I have email address. If I want to write to her, I'll do that. And it says that she was a cultural anthropologist. What is cultural anthropologist versus socioanthropology, right? So sociology and anthropology is two different things. The sociology is not anthropology. Anthropology is not sociology. Sociology is a study of society, so social structures and all the makeup of that. Anthropology basically is study of people, right? So commonly we could break down anthropology, right? In Khmer. I Google Translate. I don't know if it's true, but so anthropology, there is a physical anthropology. When you do a physical anthropologist, you study racial history, paleontology, and human genetics. So you go to DNA level, study their DNA, and things of that nature. If you do cultural anthropology, then what you do is you go ethnography, ethnology, or socioanthropology, right? In anthropology, there is archaeology. Archaeology is when you find some grave site, the archaeologists will go and dig up and save all the artifacts, the jars, and that's archaeology. And then there is anthropological linguistics. So there is an anthropologist who learned the language because Khmer language changed as 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 100 years ago. Cambodian language Khmer also changed. So someone would actually study that. So, but she's a cultural anthropologist. So what is cultural anthropology? Cultural anthropology focuses on the culture of society, including study of behavior patterns, language, customs, rituals, laws, ideas, arts, right? Dance. These are cultural anthropologists, right? And so, yeah, okay. There are people coming in late. Try to come on time because that I'm teaching and I have to admit all of you. And then sometimes it messes up the computer. So try to come in right on time or 5 minutes early, please. So what is cultural anthropology? Cultural anthropology is, it focuses on the culture and like dance and art. And for example, cultural anthropology would come and look at Apsara dance, and they would, the color and the artifact and the dress, and that's what they're interested in, right? So cultural anthropology pays attention to the cultures, right? The unique elements and things like that. Well, then my book, I don't know where my book is, but the book I wrote, do you think it's out of cultural anthropology? There you go. Is this cultural anthropology? What study is my research based on? Definitely not cultural anthropology, because I don't care about culture. I care about, it is anthropology, and it is cultural, but not culture per se, but socio-anthropology. I'm more interested in social dynamics between Khmer people, between patron and client, between missionaries and Cambodian. So my book, my research is based on socio-anthropology. So it's a little different. But I could still learn from cultural anthropologists. Socio-anthropology is a field of study that focuses on the society and social institution. Socio-anthropologist is interested in gaining deeper understanding of social structure and relationship between various social institutions. We all know the society is composed of various social institutions. They are family, educational system, politics, religion, and economy. So the socio-anthropologist is keenly interested, very, very sharply interested in understanding, comprehending, the role of these institutions, their nature, and the relationship that have been to other institutions. So I am interested in learning about the relationship dynamic between two people, two groups, patron and client, or Kap and Ur, or Korean missionaries and Cambodian pastors. So socio-anthropology, one of the main techniques that are being used is participant observation. Okay, so I would actually go, when I was doing my research, I'll go to Cambodian church in Kokong and just attend the service. I'll go to church in Phnom Penh and attend the service. I'll go Siem Reap and then just attend the meeting. I'll go to Kampong Som and just attend the meeting or teach there, and I participate. I actually engage, learning all over, so that I get the first-hand experience and first-hand knowledge and make observation. So that's what socio-anthropologists do. And socio-anthropologists mainly provide qualitative, not quantitative, because what the researcher explores is rich in depth data, which allows him to comprehend, understand the social structure, relationship among social institutions. Once the field study has been completed, the anthropologists produce ethnography. Okay. Well, in my case, I create thesis, not really ethnography. I did some study of that, but that's not. So it's based on inductive, data-driven quality research. Remember, ID quality? You constantly have to think, my master thesis, is it going to be inductive, data-driven, or deductive, theory-driven? So is it ID or DT? You have to come to terms with that. You have to decide that before you start writing. So Professor Ledgerwood, Judy Ledgerwood, is a cultural anthropologist whose research interests include violence, memory, reconstructing a meaning in post-war diaspora communities, and gender, right? She researches on Buddhism, violence, and idea of cultural identity. So that's what Judy Ledgerwood does. So Judy Ledgerwood would have her own paper, all her thesis is in that line. Well, what about mine? Mine was not cultural anthropologist paper. It was socio-anthropology in missiology. So you have to know what area that you're studying in the bigger field. Well, mine was a missional study, but looking at socio-anthropological dynamics between Korean missionaries and Cambodian pastors. So then I identified through my qualitative data, I found out the patron plays the part of father, where you have protection, as a sponsor, where you have provision, and as a partner, equality. So as a father, you provide protection. I think some of you asked in your paper, can you explain that aspect a little closely? So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm responding to the paper that you wrote on 1 to 3. So now I'm responding through by chapter 4, because I did cover that. A father's protection if father give protection, the dependency is what? Expected. Of course, you are going to depend on your father because father gives protection and you need to be dependent, right? So it's very clear. And then if that's the case, well, what about when you are sponsor? When you're sponsor, there's a provision. So you move from protection to more of provision. And so you don't really have to protect like a child. You still respect, but still need to provide because you don't have means to make it on your own yet. And then life cycle goes on. And this comes out of my research, comes out of my qualitative data, right? And so as a partner, now then you must have what? Equality. You would have equality. And from there, you need to move from partnership. And then when you go equality stage, then you become more independent. And I say this over and over again. You cannot be a partner as long as you depended on your patron. If you depended 100% on your patron, you cannot be independent. You cannot, oh, I just want partner role, but I want 100% support. You cannot do that, right? The moment you say that I want to be equal partner, then you need to be responsible. So this is something that we need to come to terms with. And that's why church plants in Cambodia is kind of lopsided. You know, Cambodian pastor says, I want to be a partner, but I want full support. So then there's a problem. So significant contribution of this book would be offering a new interpretation of aid dependency in the context of Korean missionaries and Cambodian church planters. Why? Because not one book was written on it. This was the first book written in English, about Cambodian pastors and Korean missionaries, church planting in Cambodia, and how the aid dependency became a problem, and how this was translated into kapben을 instead of patron-client. So the contribution I'm making is not supernatural. It's just because no one wrote it, and all the people who study patron-client never bothered to study Cambodia or Korea. So this will be the first one. Debate on aid dependency and missiology. So there are many, many books written on aid dependency issue, ending aid dependency, foreign aid dependency, debt aid, the politic economy of aid dependency, trouble with aid, wow, the future aid. Oh, wait a minute. Because all these books talks about, when you talk about aid dependency, it talks about how all these people are addicted. They are bound. They are not overcoming their problem. See how they're talking about Africa? They're pointing finger that they're all chained to aid. They become slaves to aid. And so all the aid literature is very unfavorable to the nationals. Well, when I type aid dependency books on Google, the first book, the first page is one of my other book that I wrote. This book, they shrunk this book they shrunk my book into something like 65 pages. It's like a little pamphlet type, and published another book, right? It's Church Planting in Patronage Culture, Aid Dependency Issue and Missional Implication from Korea to Cambodia. So it's much simpler book on the same topic. So that basically was lecture 4 through 6. Is there any question? I need to go back and forth. Make sure. Okay.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah.
Yep. From the first time until now, I still not clear about the patron and client dynamics. What is dynamics mean clearly?
Dynamic means the relationship. Dynamic means how I relate to you as a professor to student. There's a dynamic. How you relate to your wife or your mom, there's a dynamic. So definitely there is a different dynamic. Dynamic means there's a give and take. I say something, I give something, and you have to respond. I teach, and then you need to give me paper. I teach a lesson, and you ask me a question. So this is called professor and student dynamic. Well, what is the dynamic between father and son? When father provide and son has to obey. So that's called dynamic. But when son becomes 50 years old, and now son is providing for the father. Father's 80 years old. Father cannot work. Now son provide for the father. Now the father and son dynamic changed, right? Now the son provide provision and protection to the father. So dynamic actually means that something that happens between two parties, whether it be missionary, Korean missionary and Cambodian pastors, right? So what happens with patron-client dynamic is when patron comes and play cop, it was like this. It was like this, right? Because patron always has power, has money, and something to give. So when patron gave, they received, right? But as they grow, they become a partner. So you high five, high five, right? And then when you become a partner, then you both become a giver, right? So it's called 동갑 relationship. You're equal, right? So when you are the patrons giving and when you're receiving, it's not equal. It's called dynamic. It's unequal dynamic. It's not bad or anything like that. As I said over and over again, a child should receive from the father. So giving and receiving is not bad or negative. It's just the way it works. But then when you become a partner, then you start working together, right? Or the sponsor, right? And the sponsorship is chaptai, you work together, right? And then with equal partnership, you really become the one who really help the others together. So that's what I want to see Cambodian church to move. Not receiving for next 20 years, but move from being the client as a ul to become a partner. So dynamic actually just means the relational events, not.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question about chapter 4 through 6? Okay, well then let's see if I could go back to my lecture, because last time I couldn't. All right, it's a challenge. Okay, it's the only way I could do this is desktop. I don't know why. Okay, once again. Okay. So chapter 16, or lecture 16, chapter 3. So I'm going to continue with my lecture. So when you go, I start talking about this yesterday, but I need to go in deeper. The modern missionary tradition, which nurtures a dependency, displays the following 5 common factors, and see if what I'm sharing is also the case in CPTI church plans. Okay, these are just common things, 5 common factors. I find this everywhere. Every time there's a church planting between missionaries and Cambodian pastors, I find this all the time. So see if this is the case for CPTI church plant. First, money, supplies, and gifts are shared generously from missionaries and foreign Christian workers among those who they consider poor and needy. Although the assistance does not elevate or remove or problem solve some people's need and sufferings, a deeper mindset is being formed within the people that they are weak, helpless, and will need further support. Okay. So aid dependency doesn't just happen because you get help. Aid dependency happens when someone receives help, says, I need to receive this help the rest of my life. Then we have a problem, right? Because I told you that every ministry could start with mercy, helping poor people with money, poor people with water, food. So there is a dependency expected. You expect dependency when you do mercy, but you don't want to stay at mercy stage all the days of your life because you're not helping anybody that way. For example, every year Cambodia has a flood because it rains in Cambodia. When it rains in Cambodia, people die. And I don't know why people die, you know, because it floods, and when floods, and then people are isolated, wash away the house, wash away the stuff. And so every year it's like a magic. It's like they always talk about, oh, the flood is happening in Cambodia and 30 people died, 80 people died. One time, 120 people died. You talk about that. So when 100 people died, Cambodia, go tell the world, oh, we need your help, we need your help, we need your help. And I think that is a problem in itself, because you shouldn't talk about we need your help. I mean, there's a flood in Cambodia. Why should anybody help Cambodia, right? There's a flood in Korea. The Korean people do not publicize to the world, oh, there's a flood in Korea, we need your help, we need your help. They don't do that. Only country that I know, actually, when there's a flood, people die, and they immediately go to the world news and says, the people are dying in Cambodia, please come and help us. That's really sad, actually. So then world gives money, France give money, Germany gives money, right? And then because people need water, they need food, right? And so they go, well, because they are in need, mercy. So they provide water and food. But you should move on to development stage. You cannot ask, oh, and you know, after 2 months later, people say, oh, we need water, we need food. I said, the flood happened 2 months ago. So, oh no, but we love it. We love the fact that we could just get food, free water. You know, 1 year later, oh, we still need water and food. Then that's not good, right? So the whole point is that you want to start with mercy and then move on to development so that you solve your problem, right? So when Cambodia has a flood problem, you know, 10 years ago, and the world helped, but after 10 years, when flood happens, Cambodia still expect other countries to help them, then Cambodia is not doing a good job, right? Cambodia has $4 million put aside as a government fund to help the poor people in times of flood, right? So the whole thing is like that. So when we talk about church plant, yeah, at the beginning stage of church plant, there's gotta be support, that's good. And then move on to sponsorship and move on to what? Development as a partner. We have to become a partner, right? So that's the first common thing. The second, the foreign funding is supplied to provide incomes for local Cambodians and church planters. And while this assistance seems useful for maintaining the mission works, the local people view these foreign funded local leaders as hirelings or job employees from foreign organization, which diminishes the local church planters' credibility and local support of the church. One of the Cambodian pastors also shared that a Singaporean church paid him since 2002. Every month he received $400 for him, his family, and $100 for church rent. Okay, so what's going on here? So what's happening is when a pastor receives money from foreign country, the congregation, the people would say that, well, if that's the case, then we don't need to support. We don't need to support anybody, or especially the pastor. Why? Because he's an employee to a missionary. So why would we support? I know that personally because I planted 5 churches in Los Angeles area. For 20 years, I planted 5 churches. And as a church planter, I planted my first church with a lot of young people, college students and above, young adults. And because these people are young, they only gave $1 per week to the church. And of course, this was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, college student giving $1. And that's not enough to organize a church. So when our church leader, the person in charge of the finance, she said, Pastor O, can I speak to the congregation? And I said, sure. And she went up, this is 30 years ago, when I just planted my first church, and my church had maybe, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 people. She came out on the stage and said, hey, you guys, you are giving $1 a week. You come to Sunday and you're only giving $1 a week. And we need to pay our pastor salary. We cannot support our pastor if you only give $1 a week. And she said, our church is not a Sunday school. Our church is not for kids. And then she challenged them and said, how much did you spend yesterday going to a movie? So she said, you went to go see a movie with your friends last night. And 30 years ago in America, to watch a movie was about $7, $8 to attend. So she said, you pay $8 to go to a movie, and then you pay $5 for popcorn and drink, and then everything else. You spend $15 to see one movie last night. You come to House of God and you only pay $1 to hear the word of God from the man of God. And she said, you should pay $15 every week, just like a movie. You should pay at least $15 every week, because what Pastor O is teaching is worth a lot more than a lousy movie that you saw last night. So unless you're willing to pay $15 every week, don't come to our church. Our church is not meant to run by a people who's only committed to pay $1 a week. Do you think our church offering increased? Absolutely. It almost went 4 to 5 times more. Okay, so the little church that I had with young people, every month we're collecting $7,000 to $8,000 per month. So these are 70, 80 college students, $7,000 to $8,000 per month, 30 years ago. So it's really, when people think that, oh, our pastor gets paid by foreigners, our pastor gets paid, supported by NGOs, FBOs, then your people gonna stop giving. That's what I find in Cambodia as well. So according to him, only after the Singapore support ended in the 6th year, people began to give to the church. Oh, so it was only when the Singapore stopped giving him salary, they said, oh, we better support him then if the Singapore doesn't support, right? By 2009, after 7 years, their church became financially independent, being able to pay for both church facility and church leaders' salaries. See, the problem remained when pastor receives a salary and subsidy from FBO. The Cambodia Christian, the members' mindset, foreign missionaries are responsible for supporting their national leaders, and the locals themselves would likely not be able to give to the fullest degree that missionary can supply. So as long as the senior pastor received money from the NGOs and FBOs, the people of the church refused to give. They did not give to the church. Well, that's, he gets paid. He gets salary from foreign mission board. So why would we support the church? Just like I got any support. I did not receive any support from nobody. I work as a translator. My wife worked full time. I worked, and I mean, we went through such a difficult time financially. We have to cry out to God, and we trust in faith, and and people always say, Bob, you're a smart businessman. You could go out and make millions of dollars. Why are you a pastor? And why are you doing this? You're a businessman. You could make 20, 30, 40,000 a month. Why serve God and don't take any salary? And how are you going to live? How are you going to provide for your children? How are you going to provide for your future? How are you going to provide for the house? And all this accusation, all this attack, and all this misunderstanding. I cry out to God, God, you call me into ministry. I got 3 growing up children. I don't have their milk money. I don't have their supplies. I don't have money in the bank. But Lord, I trust that you're going to provide. And the congregation saw that I am the poorest member of the church, because my church members were quite well-to-do. Some members were spending $10,000 every time they go vacation. They would take an airplane, they go to boat ride, and they buy each other $10,000 watch to each other, and so they realize, wow, we better support our pastor. So they start giving, and then our church became financially independent. We were never dependent in the first place. Now, according to Cormack, Don Cormack, the author of Killing Fields and Living Fields, he wrote, Cambodian Christians enter ministry primarily because they saw it as secure and respectable career in which they could always rely on patronage of wealthy foreigners to support or social perks. I don't think Don McCormack has a good view about Cambodian leaders. I don't think Don McCormack sees Christians in Cambodia as respectable people. I mean, he's very negative about Cambodian Christians. He's now accusing that Christians in Cambodia became a pastor because they know they have money. They could make salary. He argues that this patronage syndrome, so to entrenched throughout Khmer's social, political, and military culture, has become a fundamental weakness in the Cambodian church, stunting or stopping its true indigenous growth, distorting its perception of Christian discipleship and service. In that book, Killing Fields and Living Fields, he writes that, yeah, Cambodian church, just like Cambodian politics, Cambodian military, Cambodian society, it's not growing because dependency. See, Don Cormack spent 20 years among Cambodian people, he says. Wow. And how could you have such misunderstanding about Cambodian people? I don't know. But they are now saying that, wow, this is a book to read. I really think that some of you should rewrite this book and defend your people. Any question and answer, or any questions about that, about what he wrote? Is that true? Do you want to become pastor because, wow, I get paid? Wow, that's a serious accusation. right? So what do you think? I'm asking you a question. Do you think?
To me, I know some leaders, church leaders that work missionary. Do you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry, I don't know.
I could hear you.
And after that, yeah, he left the church and go finding another job. To me, outside, if we look outside, yeah, everybody can look outside that these church, my church leaders, yeah, go and live from missionary because of salary, yeah, financial. But we don't look inside. What happened about inside? What happened? My church leader between my church leader to the missionaries. What happened? They outside. We look my church leader leave missionary because of money. But what happened inside between two of them? Because we are get the money from missionaries. Yeah, quality. Yeah, quality. But why somebody leave and why somebody stay serve God with this missionary? So we should look inside what happened between Khmer missionary and between Khmer church leader with missionary. Yeah,
Very good.
that's to me. It is this is many mystery. Yeah, many secret that make my church leader ask you and leave missionary. It is not because of money.
Right.
I think inside we go deep to inside. Yeah, outside because money, but inside, to me. Yeah.
So how do you think Don Cormack got his data?
Yeah, because I think that I don't know how does he find this data, but I think that he should look at to inside the Khmer church lead. Yeah,
Yeah. So
don't just look outside.
my question is, you learn from me research method. If you understand what I taught, then you have to defend Cambodian pastor by arguing, because your thesis is argument. Don't describe, argue. Argue from data. So you need to argue when you see Don Cormack and said, Don, you only did quantitative data. You never interview people and interview the inside of why we are serving God. You only saw, 150 pastors and 149 pastors get money from missionary. Oh, see, the quantitative data proves that they are dependent. A quantitative data says that they are working for money. That's why I said you need to study well. So you need to know the difference between quantitative data and qualitative data. Only thing he did was deductive, theory-based, quantitative data. And then based on his theory-based, deductive theory-based quantitative data, he surveyed the people. Oh, out of the 300 pastors I surveyed, 290 are get support from missionary. Therefore, They are dependent. They are opportunist, right? So you don't just say that, looking from his side. Then you have to say, let me do inductive, database, qualitative research and interview people, just like I did. I interview people and defended Cambodian pastors. I interviewed Cambodian pastor, and from Battambang, I interviewed him, and then I realized, he said, Pastor O, I have to get a secular job now. I said, why do you need to take a secular job? He said, well, because I'm sending 3 kids through college, and my salary is $80 a month at the time. He said, I'm taking $80 a month salary from my church. I cannot send 3 of my kids through college. So I need to quit my ministry and get a secular job. He spoke very good English. So he said that he can get a job paying him at the time $500 a month. Okay. So 15 years ago, it was a lot of money. He spoke very good English, and the NGO wanted him $500 a month. But for 13 years, he served the Lord, only making $80 a month. And so when I found out, I went to America, I went to Philippines, I went to other countries, I went to Korea, and yell at my friends and yell at American pastors. I said, how many of you are in ministry? And if someone offers you salary 7 times more than what you make right now, how many of you will still be in ministry? We have a Cambodian pastor who could make $500, only get $80, but he served Jesus for 13 years. So don't say that he's dependent. Don't say he's opportunist. We have to learn from Cambodian pastors who make sacrifices like that. Okay? So, but you cannot say that without doing a real research, doing real understanding, doing this kind of inductive, data-driven, qualitative research. And if you don't do it, nobody will. If you don't do it, then next 10 years, next 30 years, next 50 years, Don Cormack is correct. Cambodian pastors are opportunists. Cambodian pastors, they are in it because they get money. And you cannot defend it. No one will. Right? So it's important that you as Kamai study your own people and share it with us, the foreigners, so we begin to understand. When I had a meeting with Korean missionaries, hundreds of them, some thousands of them, Korean missionaries, I share about Cambodian pastors and the sacrifice they make. And I tell them, I said, every time I go to Cambodia, I learn from them. I learn about what it means to sacrifice. I know you don't understand what it means to live in a village, no electricity, and it's hot, no air condition. I mean, to me, I cannot do that. I will never be able to live at, Mondorkiri or Kampong Cham near inside the village, no electricity. There's no way. I will never be able to do that. So why would I go there and teach them something about sacrifice? And I need to learn from these pastors, right? But that's not the story that the people are getting, right? I mean, this famous book, Killing Field and Healing Field and whatever, Don Cormack, he's constantly misrepresenting Cambodian pastors, in my opinion. And someone better stop and said, that's not right. That's not who we are. All right, well, let's take a break and we'll come back sharp. 11:45. 11:41 sharp. 11:41. See you guys later. Let's take a break.